Okay, so please come. Yeah, come and stand next to me. Okay, thank you very much.
You've had your day. No? I'm not going to give you any number. I'm not going to give you any number.
Okay, you've had your chance. Okay.
This is the problem with Africa,
How do I pronounce your name? Owasanoye.
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 No, keep repeating it until you get it right.
Owasanoye. Owasanoye.
Owasanoye.
Owasanoye.
Bolagi Owasanoye.
Okay, because I know I always mispronounce. From East Africa it's tough. Okay. To all the dispossessed youth of Africa, for perpetuation of communion with ancestral spirits through the fight for African freedom, and in the firm faith that the dead, the living, and the unborn will unite to build the destroyed shrines. Selah. Thank you so much for joining us on the Dr. Mumbi Show. We are live in Ethiopia, and one of the big things that's being discussed is, of course, corruption. I'm here with Professor Bolagi Owasanoye, and he is the chairman of the ICPC. I'll be letting you know what that is in a little while. Actually, it's the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission in Nigeria. Congratulations! I just hear you got that job, but you know what?
Thank you very much.
The Transparency International, they just came out with a report saying that Sub-Saharan Africa is home to the most corrupt nations in the world. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's very easy to point the fingers at Africa, that Africa is the home to most corrupt nations in the world. But there are many factors that are responsible for the situation of Africa. And the West, who make those judgments, they are highly culpable, for the situation of things.
Yes.
That is not to say that we do not accept that there are challenges and there are problems, and that there are no efforts to try and solve those problems. But when you point one finger, four is pointing at you. And if there is no collective action to solve the problem, I think that the reports about problems will go both ways. I think that's the way I see it.
Now, one of the big things is that Africa is really not in control of their natural resources. A lot of our natural resources are controlled by multinational corporations, which you just mentioned in there. What is the current situation with, the loopholes through tax evasion and tax havens and stuff that is seeing Africa being robbed of its the resources from its natural resources?
Those who blame Africa for being home to corrupt nations and being underdeveloped are responsible for that situation and sustaining that situation through their companies and their corporations. Africa's natural resources are exploited by foreign companies. And to underscore that, all you need to do is to go take a look at London Stock Exchange, the foreign stock exchanges, look at which companies have the big businesses exploiting natural resources in Africa. You get your answer very easily. Secondly, you take a look at the kinds of agreements, pernicious agreements that have been signed, long leases, ceding to themselves virtually, corrupting the leadership and other people, ceding to themselves rights to exploit the natural resources. Thirdly, incorporating their companies in tax haven and at the same time fighting high corporate taxes where they are operating.
Yes.
Fourthly, shifting the profits. They make the business, they do the operations in African countries, but they claim that their companies are incorporated elsewhere in order to transfer as much of the resources as they can to those places. Fifthly, fighting and challenging regulatory policies and laws that are designed by African countries to stabilize and make sure that they at least derive some benefit from their own natural resources. Fifthly or sixthly, not wanting to be responsible for the human rights consequences of their corporate practices in Africa.
Yes.
Now, so if you take all of these things together, it's little wonder that Africa will be underdeveloped and that Africa would be home to corruption, because many of the corporations who have budgets that are bigger than African countries, many don't want upright leadership in African countries. They interfere in the political and electoral processes subtly and indirectly. Once you have a government that is determined to right the wrongs, they hardly last the
Very
distance.
long, exactly.
So we've got to take everything in context. So Africans, of course, must reflect and stand back and take measures to challenge and diminish, because I would admit that it is not all the fault of the other side. We have our own faults for so long. I mean, somebody can take you for a ride for as long as you want to be taken for a ride. But you must draw the line and say, from now I need to do things properly and I need to do things well. So I think that it's very important to take all of these things in context. And those are some of the things that we're talking about, that some of the factors and the anomalies that we have identified will not change except we work together. So we have friends on the other side as well who are very concerned about what is going on in Africa, and we like to see things change. We encourage them, we want to work with them to also speak for us and join with us to change a lot of those practices, to put a lot more transparency into corporate practices, to agree to exchange of information about corporate profits, where they are operating, how they are operating, to support measures to penalize practices that underdeveloped African countries. You know, all those things, we need to work together. Because if they say the world is a global village, what it means is that it's smaller than you can imagine. And if we don't work together, we will not make progress.
So where do you think Africa has turned a corner in terms of starting to become its own man and kind of, standing up to the neo-colonial agenda and other agendas of Western and Eastern nations?
I would not say we have started discussing. We have started taking measures. We have started putting on the agenda of international conversation the things that those who are exploiting us will not want us to put there. For example, hardly would you go for some big international meeting, you want to put illicit financial flows on the agenda, you have to fight, literally, to put it there. I think that charity must begin from home. We must first discuss those issues, agree on our common positions, and then begin to speak with one voice elsewhere. Because, as you know, Africa is easily divided along fault lines by those who would like us even to be divided. And the divide and rule tactics operates in different ways. Dangling of carrots of aid here in order to, withdraw the support of particular countries from certain measures, using colonial fault lines, using linguistic fault lines, using religious fault lines. All of these things are used against Africa. But Africa must rise above those things in order to speak with one voice. And that's why it's good that we are beginning to put these critical issues on the table for our conversation. Once we educate ourselves, we understand how these things affect us and affect our future, we can begin to take those single agendas thoroughly thought out with focused recommendations. We can take them to the bigger international community in order to get remedial measures.
And finally, what do you see as, the next decade for Africa?
Well, I'm hoping that in the next decade for Africa, we're able to improve on the aspiration to meet sustainable development goals. And one of the ways to do that is to really enhance the mobilization of domestic resources. I think it is illusory for African countries to think that the resource to develop Africa must come from outside. We have enough right here. We've got to harness those resources and we've got to prudently apply them. And that's why diminishing corruption is important. I gave an example of Nigeria being able to increase tax revenue to 8 trillion from about 35 million within the tax net. And that's a country of of almost 200 million people. So you can imagine what will happen if we are able to improve on tax revenue, get everybody within the tax net, improve governance. You won't need any aid. You will hardly need to borrow. And that will have a multiplier effect on neighboring countries and the whole continent itself. And other African countries can do the same thing. So we've got to look inside for the solution, not outside. We've got to be focused and determined to improve our own domestically generated revenue, block the outflows that are going to develop other countries and undermining our economies, and of course, have responsible political leadership. That should take us to where we're going.
Thank you so much, Professor. That's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Thank you. Well, we've been there with the professor. He spoke very, very well at the recent open-held panel that just happened, talking about corruption of natural resources. So, Africa has hope. Let's definitely not lose hope for the nation.